لكن تحديت الظروف وخضتها وحدي صبورا مستعينا بالصلاة. كم مرة عصف الأنين بداخلي، كم مرة قد ذاق قلبي من أساه محن تمر، وكم كرهت مصابها.
So let's go back to Sharh al-Usul al-I'tiqad, and I'm going to present context now, because when they present these passages, they add their own spin and try to force their own deviant methodology, i.e. this neo-Salafi rhetoric, into these passages. Now I'm going to show you, when the ulama mentioned the i'tiqad, it was countering the deviant mubtadi'un, the deviant innovators who obviously were present at that time, and it was highlighting our i'tiqad, countering the our khisal, our characteristics, and refuting al-bid'ah. And remember, all of this is clear from the passage. So let's now present this. So as you can see on screen, so here's the original passage that Abdurrahman Hassan quoted. So he mentioned that Imam Bukhari mentioned that I met more than 1,000 men from the people of knowledge, from the people of Hijaz, wa Mecca, wal Medina, wal Kufa, wal Basra, wal Wasil, wal Baghdad, wal Sham, wal Misr, and I met them continuously, you know, qarn ba'da qarn. And then he mentions I met them numerous times, basically over 46 years. And he mentioned obviously the people of Sham and Misr and Hijaz twice, Basra 4 times, etc, etc. And he mentions obviously the amount of times he met, and then he mentions the people in Sham. He mentions all the names there, and in Misr he mentions all the names, and then in Mecca he mentions all the names, and in Medina he mentions all the names, and in Basra he mentions all the names, and in Kufa and in Baghdad and the people of Hijaz and Wasit, and etc, etc. So now we got the Aqidah of Imam Bukhari. Okay, we're going to quote it now, and we're going to show you, look at the context and which groups was he countering when mentioning this. This is the khisal of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. I mean, this is the characteristics of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, our beliefs. It's countering al-bid'ah. So the first one is, inna ad-din qawl wal amal, that indeed in this religion is speech and actions. Now this is countering the Murji'ah. Okay, this is countering the Murji'ah, meaning that the Murji'ah believed that whatever you do is like fasl al-amal wal iman, that the amal, I mean the actions are separated from iman. So you could do whatever you want, providing you believe, okay, nothing will happen, okay. But we hold the belief that in this religion, basically the speech, that in the deen qawl wal amal, that indeed the speech and action has a bearing on the iman. And then he presents an ayat of Allah Azza wa Jal highlighting that fact. Then, so now we got that covered. It's countering who? The Murji'ah. It's countering the Murji'ah because they rejected that amal has a bearing on iman. So that's countering that. You see the context now? Tick that box off. Who was this countering? This aqidah is countering the Murji'ah. He mentions وَأَنَّ الْقُرْآنَ كَلَامُ اللَّهِ غَيْرُ مَخْلُوقٍ, that the Qur'an is the speech of Allah and is not created. Now who is this countering? This is countering the Mu'tazila, who believe the Qur'an is created. Okay, so you see, the khisal of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, the Aqidah of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, is refuting those al-bid'ah who had deviant beliefs. So the first one was the Murji'ah. Like he said, in the deen qawl wal amal, that in this religion, okay, that the speech is sayings and actions. So that's a Murji'ah, ticked. And the Qur'an is the speech of Allah, ghayr makhluq, Mu'tazila, ticked. Okay, so as you can see, done. Okay. So you see context when you present the context. Let's carry on. Then he mentions وَأَنَّ الْخَيْرَ وَالشَّرَّ بِالْقَدْرِ, that good and evil, okay, is basically created by Allah. Is, you know, the Qadr of Allah Azza wa Jal. And then he mentions the ayat of Surah Al-Falaq. And then he mentions the ayat of Allah Azza wa Jal, which is وَاللَّهُ خَلَقَكُمْ وَمَا تَعْمَلُونَ. Now pay attention, that we do not make takfir of anyone from the people of Qibla with sins. And then he mentions the verse that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not forgive anyone who commits shirk with him, and he forgives anything else. And then he mentions that they forbade bid'ah, etc. And then he mentions the verse that hold on to the rope of Allah, do not be divided, etc. And then he mentions other stuff as well. Then he gets to where the arrow's over, and you can see it highlighted. It says, do not dispute with those in power. Now Abdurrahman Hassan translated it as, do not we do not go against the oppressive Muslim ruler. Let's listen to him.
He mentions the aqidah is what? وَأَلَّا نُنَازِعَ الْأَمْرَ أَهْلَهُ, that we don't go against the oppressive Muslim leader. لِقَوْلِ النَّبِي صلى الله عليه وسلم, because of the Prophet's statement. And then he mentions the hadith.
And then he mentions the last phrase, and that we do not see the sword upon the Ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, this is now presented into context. Yes, okay, that there you go. We don't accept that the sword upon the Ummah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, as you can see, the aqidah of Imam al-Bukhari, as he mentioned, okay, that they were warning against al-bidah. You see, the start was al-murji'ah, the second was al-mu'tazila, the third was al-qadariyah, meaning about qadr, and then he mentions al-khawarij. You see, when you place it into context, and obviously he mentions thereafter that we do not relinquish or dispute with those in power, because the khawarij used to make takfir of them and then rebel against them. You see, that was prominent. That's what they were, consistently doing. This was their manhaj. This was their aqidah. So we were countering that because we do not dispute with those in power. And obviously, those in power, meaning the righteous ruler, the ruler of justice. The Khawarij didn't care. The Khawarij made takfir of the people and rebelled against them. Those who committed the kaba'ir, obviously, but they made takfir very loosely. And they used to kill the Ummah of the Prophet ﷺ. This was known. What we're presenting is that when you present all of these passages from the books of the Salaf, etc., understand its context. Do not, misquote and do not misapply and misrepresent the books of the Salaf to then forge your plastic and again, I believe all Salafis, or not, if not all, that's a bit harsh, but most of these Salafis have this inner takfirism. Again, this is due to the Najdi da'wah, but when it comes to al-bidah, some use it in terms of tabdi', have this tabdi' project, and some have this takfiri project, and this is obviously courtesy of the da'wah and the manhaj of Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab. So we already proved he's a fraud. Okay, we're going to prove it even more. Don't worry, Trainwreck Part 3, as you can see on screen. We got that coming as well in the new year, bi-idhnillah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
آمنت أن الآخرة لا بد يوما آتية كل الخلائق حاضرة كل السرائر بادية في موقف ما أعظم لم تخف منهم خافية والهول فيهم قد بدا الشمس منهم دانية في موقف ما أعظم لم تخف منهم خافية والهول فيهم قد بدا الشمس منهم دانية